Hello and welcome to another edition of Classic Motors. What could be more classic than an A35 van? But in the early days of the German motor industry, of course, cars that we now think of as classics were relatively unknown. What's this? Well, the answer is that it's a Lloyd. Now, it was built by a small company in Germany, beautifully built. Just look at the detail of this beautiful door handle, superbly engineered. Of course, this Lloyd Alexander TS was born in 1959. The first fuel crisis, economy was all important, hence 600cc engine and very good miles to the gallon. But the German industry was a bit slow to catch up with the economy cars. Borgward was still building things like the Hansa over there, great tank of a vehicle. But BMW were getting into the business by building their own microcars, of course the Isetta. But the early history of a lot of German cars are relatively unknown by a British audience. Ian Royle went to the Audi Museum at Ingolstadt to find out a bit more about the history of those magic four rings.
One of the great joys of being a motoring journalist is that you get to go places where, well, if you were a member of the public, you just wouldn't get to go. For instance, here we are at the Audi Tradition Museum in Ingolstadt. This isn't normally open to the public. We're allowed here today to look at these wonderful cars. But looking is all well and good. Imagine what it would be like to drive something like this on the open road. If only. A 1939 Audi 920 convertible. It must have been at the time the bee's knees. A six-cylinder engine, 2.5 litres, producing about 70 brake horsepower, would get you to a top speed of around about 70 miles an hour. Now, these cars were produced between 1938 and 1940. Of course, the war would have affected production greatly, and they really are quite fun to drive. It gets a bit of getting used to. The brakes are very, very sharp. There's hardly any room for your foot on the accelerator pedal, especially if you're wearing rather big shoes like I am today. But once you sort of get used to it and come to a stop, it's all right. It really is such an amazing car to drive, and these days with having such good brakes on cars, you don't need to think ahead and plan ahead quite as much. Of course, you should keep an eye on what's ahead on the road in front of you, but in something like this you really do have to think far, far ahead about how you're actually going to stop, because the brakes take some real getting used to. You put your foot down and nothing much happens from about 30 miles an hour. So beware seems to be the key thing to say about driving a car like this. Well, what a positively amazing car. It's been a fascinating trip to Ingolstadt here to celebrate 100 years of Audi tradition. It's quite amazing to drive a car like this, which is, after all, 60 years old. And it makes you think that the Audi tradition is something very special. At the time, just before the outbreak of the Second World War, this must have been the absolute bee's knees in automobiles. But of course, without Audi's tradition, cars like that and all the other great cars that we've seen wouldn't have been produced. And cars like this, the stunning TT, also wouldn't have been produced. That car is, well, it's rather difficult to drive for somebody who's not used to the lack of power steering and lack of power brakes and things like this. This car makes you incredibly lazy. But I'm driving home in this all the same.
Oh, don't you just love those Audis? Well, I've got Stuart with me here. Now, Stuart, this has to be the cleanest classic car I have ever seen in my life. Look at that engine. You could eat your dinner off that engine. Tell us about it, Stuart. How long have you had it?
I've had it since I've had it about 7 years now. It's a 1977 MGB GT.
Beautiful.
And it's took me 3.5 years to restore it.
And you've done it all yourself?
My brother-in-law and myself, yeah. over the period of 2.5 years, 3.5 years.
And what condition was it like when you got it?
Well, I thought it was quite reasonable at the time, but once we started picking away at it, it was some bad rust underneath.
Really?
Which all had to be cut out.
And this looks like it's all been resprayed.
Everything, yeah. These are new panels which were actually on the car when I bought them, so we've just taken them off, resprayed them all up, and put everything back.
And did you know what you were doing, or have you been learning as you've gone along?
Learn as I go along. My brother-in-law's in the trade, and he did most of the work. I was doing the labouring side, but.
And is it expensive to do?
Only if you do it. If you're at a garage to do it, would be. But obviously you've got to keep the price down, so you do it yourself. You know, that's the way.
Best way.
DIY.
DIY. And what's your favourite thing about the car? Your favourite memory?
The memory. Well, being finished after a 3.5 year. I mean, there's many a time I just wanted to walk away. But it's just great to drive now. You know,
That's
after that long. That's the one.
The feeling of going out and driving
it. Is, yeah.
it.
Oh, that power behind you.
Stuart, it's a beautiful car and it has got lots of power. And here's another car with a lot of power, a Ferrari.
When Ferrari celebrated its 39th year, Enzo requested a brand new model, the ultimate machine, to celebrate the company's great 40th year. Just 12 months later, the 89-year-old unveiled the stunning F40, and it would be the last he would unveil. It would be the last new car he would see before he died, but it made a perfect tribute to his life's work. The goal was to create a race car quality with style and coding from the legendary 250 LM. It was achieved in a single year by basing it on the 288 and elements of the 328, plus F1 technology, which of course they were accruing all the time. It was designed by Pininfarina and built between 1987 and 1990. Initially, it announced that they were just going to have 400 cars and £160,000 each. That was a lot for the time, but it still caused 3,000 requests and deposits. Profiteering, unfortunately, pushed the value of these cars up to £1 million. And so Ferrari increased production to just over 1,000 in order to ease the demand. This is probably the most beautiful body in motoring. It's Pininfarina at its best, and it isn't just pretty, it's aggressive. Every panel oozes a single-mindedness. It only has one intention, and that's to travel fast. Some of the styling, such as these rear ducts and the fin, are naturally here to help keep that much power on the ground. Under the plexiglass, that is power. That is a devastatingly fast 32-valve twin-turboed V8, enlarged from 2855 through to virtually 3 in order to deliver a stunning 478 brake horse. Everything about this car is designed for performance. The trim is extremely basic. There are no pretenses of luxury, even though it is an icon. The only privilege you have is you have full air conditioning. And believe me, with an engine as powerful as this behind, you truly need it. There is a key, and the key does deal with the fuel and with the electrics. But the actual engine and the button to another world is this one. Classic Ferrari gearbox. Don't put it in first, it's reverse. Hang on. It is actually remarkably nimble. Although there's not exactly the sort of silence that would allow you to have a CD player. The music itself is all from the V8, all from the twin turbos. The car itself is incredibly light. It's almost the same weight as a Golf VW. Just as Pininfarina's styling gives it all the aggression that one would hope of a sports supercar. So its performance and its manner is the same. It's moody, it's disinterested, it's very listless. Around these sort of revs, we're running at 2 at the moment, it really isn't terribly interested. There are lots of lightweight, smaller sports cars which are a lot more fun. But the moment you put your foot down, the thing becomes suicidal up to about 7,500 revs. There's no pretending in this car. 0 to 60 is in 3.6 seconds. And here we go. That's scary, but it's actually what the F40 does absolutely brilliantly. The brakes, needless to say, are enormous. They're drilled, they're ventilated, they're a huge size, and they're air ducted just to make sure that you do get some kind of stopping power with all this surge. You read write-ups that tell you that it's docile and it's sweet, and certainly if you drive it at these speeds, it will behave itself. But it doesn't enjoy it, and it's rough and it's bumpy. It really only knows one thing, and that is being the fastest Ferrari they've ever made for the road. Well, finally I can add an F40 to my street credentials. The trouble is, not everyone is impressed by the same thing. For some, a little blue Peter badge does just as well.
John Stanley there with the Ferrari F40. The F40, of course, possessor of super performance, but for so many people, their first sports car was their first experience of any sort of performance. And the good old Frogeye Sprite was that first sports car for so many people. Based really on the Austin A40, the Frogeye was unitary construction, quarter elliptic rear suspension that made for exciting handling to say the least, 948cc A-series engine. And believe you me, there was enough power there to get this thing sideways, even on country lanes. I did my first rally in a Frogeye Sprite, and I still remember we had aero screens instead of the upright windscreen, and you could pick the blue bottles off your teeth at 55 miles an hour. Not a lot of room in it, no boot. If you wanted to stow anything, it had to go behind the seats. No exterior door handles, of course. The only door handles on the interior, and a lot of it used to have a piece of string here that you pull to open the door. There was quite a vogue for replica Frogeyes at one point. There was a company on the Isle of Wight making fiberglass replicas of these cars, but why buy a replica when you can get the original for less money? And there's not very many things on this car that are not available as spares, from a new body shell and of course the A-series engine. Well, that powered so many BMC cars that there's no end of spares for them. One of the quickest Frogeyes I ever drove had a Coventry Climax 1220cc engine installed instead of the old BMC A-series, but I reckon that was just about at the limit of the original Frogeye handling. Of course, Stephen Vokes down at the National Motor Museum Trust sees so many cars going into the collection, but he doesn't see that many commercial vehicles, because this week Stephen is on the track of the good old Ford Transit. So many rock bands over the years have started their early lives flogging up and down the M1 in a Transit.
And welcome back. Now I'm with my friend here, Don, who has got the most beautiful Rolls-Royce here. Do you want to tell us a story behind it, Don?
Yes, I bought the car 12 years ago from a dealer down in Hampshire. It was a retirement present to myself after being 31 years in the hotel business in Llandudno.
Well done.
And I've had sort of 12 years of pleasure with it, going to shows and that like this ever since, you know, and it's given me a lot of pleasure.
How many owners has it had?
20. It's had more owners than any other car in the country.
You're joking?
Yeah, true.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Well, there we go. And how old is the car?
It's 74 years old.
And you just take it to shows, or do you go around?
No, I don't do anything like weddings. I use the car, but I just do go to shows.
You use the car? What, to go to Sainsbury's?
No, I don't. That I don't do.
On a Sunday, you go out driving, and what's your favourite kind of like memory of your car?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I like sort of going just for a wander around the local roads and things like that, around Anglesey and around Carnarvonshire. It's very, very pleasant.
And what's it like? How many miles to the gallon?
About 14.
So
About 14.
Not that many.
No.
And what happens when it rains?
You get wet.
Is that why we've got this little
Well, yes,
roller here?
There is a hood, but it takes you a month to put it up, and you need a month in writing. Do you want to take it out?
Yeah, let's have a look at this. Hey, just the right kind of brolly as well. Fantastic.
There we go.
Rolls-Royce. Let's have a little look round the front. So was it like in this condition when you got it then, John?
No, it was good, but it wasn't as good as it is now.
Now you can get beautiful classic cars like this at the National Motor Museum at Bewley. You can also get commercial vehicles like the Ford Transit. A success story since day one, but are today's Ford Transit vans an improvement on the original? We sent Steve Vokins to find out.
Yes, the butcher, the baker and the candlestick maker. For the past 3.5 decades, businesses big and small across the whole of Europe have regarded the transit van as an essential tool in the maintenance of their trade. It's as common a part of the modern landscape as lampposts and loading bays. And now there's a brand new one, the Mark IV, available in front drive, rear drive and even 4x4. Now normally vans aren't anything to get excited about, unless for instance they're carrying rock stars en route to gigs.
We were in the 60s. I think that to me was the beginning of it all. The nicest times I think I ever spent. I grew my hair long, I left my first job and I turned professional in a group. And we had a van. And the van we had was a Transit. It was a good time to be, a good time to travel.
Why a Transit?
Why a Transit? Well, after having Austin J2s and comma vans, which majority of them were quite good, but some broke down, the Transit became the van with an image. If the group was to be serious, you know, and they say, well, it's a serious band, they've got to have a serious van. So when you turned up, it was all image, you see. So we had this white Transit, you see. And of course it had got the space. And everybody travelled together in those days, you know. You had to live in the Transit practically.
What do you reckon to this then?
Well, it's a damn sight better than the one I remember, that's for sure.
Have a look.
We had a roadie actually called Pete Murdoch who used to cart our stuff around in the early days in one of the first Transits.
Yeah.
It was two-tone, it was sort of red and rust, that one. And one of the longest tours we ever did in a Transit was with Talking Heads.
Oh, right.
And we were supporting Talking Heads when they first came to England. And that would have been about 78.
Yeah.
And we did a university tour all around England in this Transit, and because we were the support band, we got stuck in the back. And it was incredibly cold, and I do remember the heat never ever got through to the back of the Transit.
All right.
It was all soaked up by Talking Heads in the front and us in the back.
I lived in Wolverhampton in the Midlands, right? We used to travel up to strange places called Wick in the north of Scotland. And in fact, I remember one time, because we had long hair, people thought we were Rolling Stones, you see. And they said, you're not coming into my place, are you? He said, you're a scruffy bunch, you know, I'm going to wreck my bed and breakfast place, you see. So we used to have to sleep in the van. And of course, the thing with the Transit, it was big. And you could get beds in the back, you see, and curtains around the side of the windows, if you had windows, that is, you know. But the van was very important, especially the fact of reliability, because you had to get back home, you're still living with your parents, you know. I mean, those were really good days which built a good foundation to Slade, you see, for later on in life.
Meanwhile, back on the road, and we're heading into central London, where the new Transit will have to do battle with taxis, gatsos, dispatch riders, traffic lights, traffic wardens, and all manner of hazards and hassles. We're en route to our final rock hero.
Essentially, it's cars that I feel strongly about, and they tend to be cars that were successful from their era. So I'm not particularly interested in new cars or old cars. I'm fairly Catholic in my taste, but so I've got a 1901 Panhard, but it was almost certainly a competition car, and then a Bugatti, a Type 35B, which is perhaps one of the greatest vintage racing cars, and so on. So most of the cars had a fairly important competition history at some point in the last century. I suppose, of course, the music has paid for what could have been a sort of small hobby to become a rather grand hobby. But I mean, I was interested in cars and competition long before, really, before I even started playing the drums. And I think it's a question sometimes asked, and I think whatever I'd done, I'd have probably ended up with at least one old car and racing it. Well, I think it's terrific. They'll be very lucky if they start with anything as good as this, because we certainly didn't.
Must have been a bonding experience having 6 people in such a small space for long journeys.
I think it was, and the journeys were long. There was a tendency to find that you were doing the Isle of Wight one day and the Isle of Man the next, and various places in between. I know I got to know the motorways of England, which were then less complete, pretty well.
Mm. Well, thanks very much, Nick.
Well, pleasure. Thank you.
The Ford Transit is as much a part of rock and roll legend as throwing TVs out of hotel bedroom windows. This new sharp-suited, ultra-fashionable Mark IV offers all the traditional benefits of its predecessors and adds high levels of comfort and luxury to the equation for good measure. These new levels of driver pampering might just herald a new era of laid-back, non-aggressive van driving. Now there's something we could really thank Ford for.
Ford's Transit. Of course, I remember a classic public relations cock-up when they launched the Transit at the new Langley factory to us. The workers were all laughing for some reason. We soon found out why. One of the bodies, as it came across an overhead carrier to be joined up with the chassis, suddenly literally fell to pieces. All the body sides fell off and the doors fell off the back because the workers had not spot welded round the edge of the roof on purpose. Big joke. Ford Public Relations very red-faced and said it could never, ever happen again. Well, that's the only Transit I've ever seen literally fall to pieces. That's all for this week's show. Next week we look at the BMW Z1 and 2 more classic Fords, the Anglia and the Cortina. Bye for now.